More than 1.5 million Syrians have taken refuge in countries like Lebanon and Jordan. They fled their homes to find safe living conditions. The Local Government Resilience Program is an initiative developed by V&G International and Dutch municipalities to support local authorities in the development of these camps. One of these camps is Zaatari in Jordan. V&G International and the Municipality of Amsterdam are looking at ways to guarantee the long-term economic sustainability of the camp. In this interview, we will talk about emergency housing and urban planning under uncertain scenarios.
I work as a coordinator for the City of Amsterdam in a refugee camp in Jordan. And the main goal of the project is to support the development of a camp. And this camp Zaatari is quite big. It's 80,000 inhabitants. The people are from Syria. They flee from the war. And they live there in the camp for about 7 years now, almost. And the camp started as a development in emergency because they had to take care of these people. But after 6 years, it's becoming more and more into a city. And the City of Amsterdam, being a responsible capital, wants to support UNHCR in developing the camp. And my role is the coordinator because we support on several levels, not only urban planning, urban development, we discuss about shelter, but also water management, stormwater, sewage, and solid waste management, for instance. And what we recognized is that during the project, it turned out that you can't look to a camp as a distinct entity in a country. You need to take the country, the countryside, and the host communities into account. So one of the challenges in the camp is housing, and we call that an emergency shelter, taking care of the shelter of the people. They need to have a place for their family, for their well-being. And the problem with emergency planning and refugees is that it starts with tents. And one of the issues that is really important in Zaatari, because Zaatari is in the north of Jordan, and it's a very arid climate, it's desert. So the climate is very harsh. In the summer it's extremely hot, and in the winter it is cold and rainy. So these tents, they don't apply to this kind of climate. And I think 3 years ago, all these tents are changed and switched for cabins. And these are the things that the contractors use to work with if they are on the building site. So you have to imagine these people live in quite simple constructed cabins. And if it comes to housing, if it comes to shelter, you can imagine that improving this condition, because these shelters are not very good, improving the condition of the shelter is very costly. And there's hardly any money to do so, to work that. So most of the people try to adapt and to improve the shelter a little bit to their own convenience with the little money they have. If it comes to shelter, there is another issue, and the issue about shelter is who owns the cabin. So the 80,000 people of Zaatari, they live in about 28,000 cabins, and they're grouped together into little compounds. And the question that we have, the discussion that we have with UNHCR, but also with the people in the camp, is in the end, who owns them? Who is the owner? And UNHCR is not a housing corporation, and the shelters are provided by NGOs and aid organizations and distributed among the people. And the people feel that this cabin and their little compound is their own. So they adapt and they change and they improve it to their own liking. maybe it's interesting to search on Google Maps and look to the city of the camp Zatri. And if you zoom in to the camp, you see that all the shelter, all the cabins are randomly placed over the camp, as if they're thrown just like that. And this is because people took the initiative themselves to group the cabins and to close them into separate compounds to be able to live together with their families, with their relatives, with their parents. So the camp has a very informal ambiance, but it's also a difficult thing in the sense of that we discuss now, how do you develop a randomly placed camp and cabins like this? I worked in the camp for half a year together, and I worked together there with one student from the University of Wageningen and two students from the University of Delft. And what they made was free accessible public space. If you look to the camp from Google Maps, what you see is that you have the cabins, you have all the facilities, but the facilities are behind fences. And what we said, the people in the camp wanted a public space to gather together, to play, to meet, to converse, to maybe leisure. And we set up a system to develop urban space, public, free accessible public space together with the inhabitants. We made the designs, the students made the designs, we provided the people with the materials, but the materials were constructed, the sites were constructed by the people themselves, and we offered them a meal in the afternoon, and it was very successful. So we were able to make 2 sites where these people can meet in their neighborhood and improve the community sense of community. And it's a typical thing, because if you look to the urban space, there is only sand and there is only mud if it rains, and there are little roads. And now there's 2 spots, and we're going to make more of them, where these people can meet and use the public area. If you look to the camp and you try to get an image about the public space, this is very typical, because from my point of view, from my experience, the public space is always designed. There's always pavement, there is streets, there is pedestrian pathways, there are cycling routes, you have lampposts, you have signs, and in the camp there's hardly anything. So for me, it was very difficult in the beginning to grasp how do you deal with the public space if there is nothing. So what we did is we started just making spaces or improving spaces that were already used by the inhabitants. And we called it emerging public space. So there was a site where people get together to play or to chat or to just meet one another. And we said, okay, let's make benches there, let's make some shading because the sun is really burning in the summer. Let's make a little playground so that the children can play there and go there with their mothers. And this turned out to be very successful. From the beginning of my work in the camp, there was a constant discussion about, and what about the future of camps? And UNHCR and UNICEF and different other UN organizations discussed about the way that protracted camp could or would develop. And this discussion is always about how do you develop the camp if they protract in a sustainable way. And the sustainable way could be for the benefit of the people in the camp living there now, but also we have to think about, could it be of support to the host communities or to the host country? But that is a difficult question because from a political point of view, maybe you want these people to go back. And from the people's point of view, these people want to go home. But still we think that to be able to improve the livelihood of the people living in camp, but also the people in the host communities around it, you need to build a system of development. And for me it is about setting small steps, but in a direction that is good for the country and good for the people. And in Jordan they have experience with Palestinians, because about 4 million Palestinians live in camp-like neighborhoods, for instance in Baka. And this camp evolved from tents to cabins to a stone neighborhood with very narrow streets, with bad infrastructure, and the houses are very badly constructed and very unhealthy. So we thought, given this experience, it's better to plan, maybe not big plans, but plan in a certain direction instead of doing nothing at all. So we think it's better to make plans than laissez-faire. Let it go, because if you let it go, maybe you end up with a thing that you don't want. I would like to add 2 more things. And one is, if you work in a camp, if you work in urban development, what I noticed that all the systems and tools and ways of working we learn at the universities, they can be applied for the development of Western cities, but you can also use these knowledge, you can use this experience in more difficult kind of situations like a camp, and I think also in more informal cities everywhere in the world. It is by, and I think that is very important, you have to force yourself to postpone your judgment. So don't think you know it. You have to really dive deep into the situation you're in. And it took me about 2 months to understand what the camp was and how the systems work before we were able to start coming up with solutions or maybe designs. So take the time to really incorporate the problem into your own. Don't assume, and then afterwards you can start. And even after half a year, I sometimes are confronted with some experiences I didn't expect. So still, I need to learn, although I'm already more than a year acquainted with the camp. And the other thing I wanted to add is, what we saw in making this public space is that the involvement of the public, of the people living there, was extremely important. And if you look to normal city kind planning, it is always, or most of the times, top-down. So people from universities, they sometimes think they know how to solve problems in cities, but you can't do that with the support, without the support and without the thinking of the people living there. So you have to take these people into account. And this is the reason why we were, I think, successful in making these little public spaces in Zaatari, because we did it with the community themselves, and now they take care for it.